The peaceful moment before the storm. Introduction. For years, Earth had known peace. After decades of wars and chaos, humans had finally reached a moment where they could rebuild. Cities flourished, trade between planets grew, and humans, along with many alien species, worked together to make a better future. Earth's reputation had shifted from a world of conflict to one of peace and healing. It was a time where unity was celebrated, and Earth had become a symbol of hope in the galaxy. One of Earth's proudest achievements was its medical corps, a collection of the most talented doctors, medics, and healers from across the universe. They were dedicated to saving lives, helping the wounded, and bringing an end to suffering wherever it was found. This wasn't just about Earth's own citizens. It was about every species, every race that needed help. The medical corps had earned the trust of all, and with each successful mission, their fame spread far and wide. These doctors and medics had set up bases on distant planets, in orbiting stations, and in areas affected by conflict. Their ships were known for their bright, peaceful colors and their large symbols of healing, the emblem of Earth. People from all over would come to Earth's medical facilities, knowing they would receive the best care possible. Earth's influence had reached beyond its borders, and its medical corps had become a sign of Earth's power, not through weapons, but through kindness, knowledge, and dedication. However, there was something uneasy in the air. Earth's peace had not gone unnoticed by all. Not everyone appreciated this sudden shift from conflict to healing. In the darker corners of the universe, where war and destruction thrived, there were whispers of rebellion. Some species saw Earth's peaceful expansion as a threat, others as a challenge. They could not allow this new power, this new symbol of hope, to grow any further. They saw Earth's peaceful influence as a weakness, one that they could exploit or destroy. While most of the universe basked in Earth's peaceful influence, a growing number of enemies were plotting in silence. They didn't strike immediately, and they didn't attack openly. Instead, they waited, watched, and planned. Their strategy was simple: destroy what Earth had worked so hard to build. The medical corps, the very symbol of Earth's commitment to peace, would be their target. They had been chosen not because of their military power, but because of what they represented. If they could strike at Earth's heart, if they could attack the medics, those who had given so much to protect others, it would break the spirit of Earth itself. The attackers knew that Earth would never use its military might on an enemy that threatened its healing forces. The plan was simple: attack, destroy, and cripple Earth's greatest strength. For weeks, there were subtle signs, hints of a growing threat, but they were easy to overlook. A strange ship spotted near a medical station here and there. Unmarked ships flying through the dark corners of space. But the signs were dismissed as nothing more than routine anomalies. People didn't believe that anyone would be foolish enough to attack Earth's medical corps. Why would anyone risk such an act? The galaxy had been at peace for too long for anyone to imagine that something so horrible could happen. Earth's enemies knew that no one would expect an attack. They counted on Earth's confidence, their belief in peace, to make them blind to the danger. And then, without warning, the storm broke. On a quiet, unassuming morning, the attack began. Medical ships and stations across Earth's influence were suddenly under siege. It happened so quickly, so unexpectedly. Ships that had once carried hope, relief, and safety now burned under enemy fire. The peaceful medical stations that had been symbols of Earth's dedication to others now became graveyards, their halls empty of life and hope. The attackers struck fast and hard. Earth's medical corps had no way to defend themselves. The enemies had chosen their moment carefully, attacking when Earth's forces were spread thin, focusing on rebuilding the galaxy. The attackers were ruthless, using advanced tactics and technology to tear through Earth's defenses. It was clear that this was no random act of violence. It was a calculated strike aimed at destroying everything Earth had worked so hard to protect. Panic spread. The doctors, medics, and healers who had once been seen as Earth's greatest heroes were now fighting for their lives. There was no time to process what had happened, no time to understand why the attackers had chosen this moment. The only thing left to do was to fight back. But the real question lingered in the air. Why? Why would anyone risk the wrath of Earth by attacking the medics? What had Earth's peaceful mission done to provoke such violence? No answers came, only more questions and more pain. As the medical corps struggled to survive and send out distress signals, Earth's leadership remained silent. The peace that had once defined them seemed to hang in the balance. But as the first day passed and the severity of the attack became clear, one thing became certain. Earth was no longer the safe, peaceful place it once was. The storm had come, and it was more powerful, more dangerous than anyone had expected. This attack on Earth's medical corps was only the beginning. The calm that had reigned for so long was about to shatter. And as the pieces of Earth's peace fell, the world would have to make a choice. Continue the path of healing, or take a stand and fight back with a power that had been hidden away for years. The universe would soon know that Earth was no longer just a symbol of peace. It was a force to be reckoned with. The devastation of the medical corps. The attack on Earth's medical corps had been swift and merciless. As the first waves of enemy forces descended upon the medical stations and ships, the world watched in horror. The once peaceful and secure bases, where humans and other species alike had received care, were now engulfed in flames. The attackers were unlike anything anyone had seen before, highly organized, well-equipped, and relentless in their mission. The ships that had been sent to heal, to save lives, were now reduced to burning wrecks in space. The medical personnel who had worked so tirelessly to help others found themselves trapped, defenseless, and fighting for their survival. Some had already been killed in the initial strikes, their lives snuffed out in an instant. Others were left with nothing but the wreckage of the facilities they had spent their lives building. The peaceful ships that had once carried hope and healing were now filled with chaos and despair. Earth's medical ships, known for their calm and welcoming presence, were now symbols of destruction. Each ship that was destroyed sent a ripple of panic through the galaxy. News spread like wildfire. Earth's medical corps was under attack, and no one knew how to stop it. The first few hours of the assault were filled with confusion. Earth's defenses had been designed to protect the planet itself, not to defend the vast network of medical stations scattered across the stars. The attackers had chosen their targets carefully, knowing that Earth would be slow to respond to such an unexpected blow. There was no time to prepare for the full scale of the devastation. The people of Earth were in shock. How could this happen? How could anyone be so heartless as to attack those who healed the wounded, who saved lives regardless of race or species? No one had ever seen anything like this before. The medical corps was supposed to be untouchable. They were the backbone of Earth's commitment to peace. And yet, here they were, under attack, their very existence threatened. As the hours passed, Earth's leaders began to realize the true scale of the attack. This was not an isolated incident. It was a well-coordinated strike designed to cripple the heart of Earth's power. The medical stations weren't just being destroyed for the sake of destruction. They were being eliminated to send a message that Earth's peaceful influence was no longer welcome, and that its commitment to healing was a weakness that could be exploited. The enemies responsible for the attack were still unknown, but their methods were clear. They had used advanced technology to breach Earth's defenses, and their ships were faster and more aggressive than anything Earth had encountered before. The attack had been planned for months, perhaps even longer. They knew exactly what to do to disable Earth's ability to protect its medical forces. As the news reached the leaders of Earth, the horror only deepened. There were no words of comfort, no answers to the questions that everyone was asking. Why would anyone attack the medics? What could possibly motivate such an act of violence? But there was no time for answers. Earth was under attack, and the medical corps was just the beginning. The devastation caused by the attack sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The galaxy that had once looked to Earth for guidance and peace was now watching as the planet's most cherished institution was being torn apart. People who had once traveled from far-off planets for medical help now found themselves wondering if Earth could still provide that help. Were they safe? Could anyone trust Earth's medical services anymore? The attackers had succeeded in their mission. They had shattered the image of Earth's peaceful and healing influence. They had dealt a blow that would be felt across the universe. But there was something the attackers hadn't counted on: Earth's resilience. Despite the destruction, despite the horror, Earth's spirit was not broken. There was no time to mourn the loss of so many medical personnel. The world had to act. Earth's leaders gathered quickly, their minds focused on one thing: how to respond. But what could Earth do against an enemy that had attacked so swiftly and with such brutal efficiency? For the first time in years, the world found itself facing an enemy it couldn't understand. There were no clear answers, no easy solutions. And yet, as Earth's leaders looked out over the devastation, a single thought echoed in their minds: Earth would not be defeated so easily. The attackers had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's strength. Earth had endured wars, battles, and challenges in the past. But this attack, this assault on their medical corps, was different. It was personal. The attackers had taken something far more precious than just lives. They had taken Earth's symbol of hope and healing, and Earth would make them pay. The shocked response. The news of the devastating attack spread like wildfire across the galaxy, and it left Earth in a state of stunned disbelief. How could this have happened? The very heart of Earth's peaceful mission, the medical corps, had been shattered in the blink of an eye. Lives were lost, countless innocent beings were wounded, and the galaxy now looked to Earth, waiting for a response. But what could Earth do? For years, Earth had stood as a beacon of peace, offering healing to any species that came in need. They had relied on their reputation of calmness, wisdom, and mercy. Their military forces, though strong, were rarely used. Earth's power lay in its ability to heal, to care for the wounded, and to make peace where there was once only war. But now, Earth faced an unprecedented situation. The attack had come with no warning, and there was no clear enemy to confront. The government of Earth was in chaos. High-ranking officials met in emergency sessions, discussing the attack with a mixture of disbelief and anger. There were questions, so many questions, but no answers. Who had done this? Why would anyone attack the medical corps, a symbol of Earth's commitment to peace? Who were these attackers, and what did they want? In the first few hours, there was a reluctance to take immediate action. Earth had prided itself on being a world of peace, a place that tried to avoid conflict at all costs. Its leadership had long believed in diplomacy, in negotiating peace before engaging in warfare. But as the severity of the attack became clear, so did the reality. Earth could no longer afford to stay passive. They couldn't allow the destruction of their medical corps to go unanswered. The galaxy needed to know that such an act of violence would not go unpunished. But what would Earth do? Its military, though formidable, had not been prepared for this kind of attack. Earth's enemies had struck at a time when the planet was focusing on rebuilding and providing aid to others. The medical corps had been Earth's pride, and to protect it, Earth would need to use more than just diplomacy. They needed to send a message, one that would resonate throughout the galaxy. It was during one of these emergency meetings that a drastic and controversial decision was made. Earth would release its war criminals. The decision shocked many. The very idea of releasing those who had committed the worst atrocities in human history went against everything Earth had stood for. But the gravity of the situation left no room for hesitation. Earth needed power. It needed strength. It needed the very people who had once terrorized the galaxy to now stand alongside them. The war criminals had been imprisoned for years, locked away for their horrific crimes against humanity. These were the individuals who had orchestrated some of the most devastating attacks on Earth's colonies, who had caused pain and suffering on an unimaginable scale. They were ruthless, dangerous, and many believed they were beyond redemption. But now, Earth's leaders saw no other option. If the attackers were to be stopped, it would be the war criminals who would help Earth fight back. As the news broke of the release, the galaxy was in an uproar. There were cries of outrage, disbelief, and fear. The war criminals were seen as nothing more than monsters, their release a terrible betrayal of Earth's values. But Earth had no choice. The situation was dire, and if they wanted to have any hope of protecting their world, they needed the war criminals' strength, their ruthless strategies, and their knowledge of how to fight back against such an enemy. The decision was not made lightly. Earth's leaders knew that freeing these criminals would have consequences. It would be hard to justify, and even harder to stomach. But there was a grim sense of understanding that, in times of war, desperate measures sometimes had to be taken. As Earth's forces prepared to release the criminals, a sense of dread hung over the planet. No one knew how these individuals would behave. Would they fight for Earth, or would they turn on their liberators? They were criminals for a reason. Had anything changed? Could Earth trust them? The questions were endless, but the answer was clear. Earth had no other option. The medical corps had been attacked, and Earth would do whatever it took to protect what remained of their peace. As the war criminals were brought back into action, a sense of unease spread across the leadership. These were people who had once been feared, individuals who had caused so much pain. Now they would be Earth's last hope. Would the very people who had once been humanity's greatest threat become its saviors, or would they betray them once again? The stage was set. The war criminals had been released, and the response to the attack on Earth's medical corps was about to begin. But as the first steps were taken to prepare for war, one thing became clear. Earth's future now depended on its ability to control these dangerous individuals, to use them to fight for a cause they had once fought against. The galaxy watched, waiting for Earth's next move. Would the war criminals bring the revenge Earth needed, or would they prove to be a new kind of threat? Only time would tell. The war criminals unleashed. The decision had been made, and Earth was now facing the consequences. The war criminals, once locked away for their unspeakable crimes, were now free. Their release sent shockwaves through Earth's military and political leadership, but there was little time to question the decision. The attack on the medical corps was only the beginning, and the galaxy was watching Earth to see how it would respond. The criminals, long held in the deepest, most secure prisons, were brought out under heavy guard. Their faces, once hidden behind bars, were now exposed to the world. Some of them had been leaders of vast armies, masterminds behind wars that had left countless victims in their wake. Others were notorious for their merciless tactics and their utter disregard for life. They had been responsible for some of humanity's darkest moments, and yet they were now Earth's only chance at survival. As they emerged from their confinement, the war criminals were met with mixed reactions. To many, they were symbols of fear, hate, and destruction. Their release was a controversial and deeply unsettling move, one that could very well backfire. How could Earth trust these people, these monsters, to fight on their behalf? Were they truly reformed, or had they merely waited for the opportunity to escape their cages and wreak havoc once more? But as the criminals were armed and prepared for battle, Earth had no other choice but to place their faith in them. They were the only ones who knew how to strike back against the attackers with the same kind of ruthless efficiency. These criminals had spent years perfecting their strategies, and though their methods had been cruel and heartless, Earth now needed that very brutality to survive. The criminals were given a chance to redeem themselves, to prove that they could fight for something greater than their own twisted desires. They were told that if they fought for Earth, if they helped to bring justice to those who had attacked the medical corps, they might one day earn their freedom. But no one knew if they could truly be trusted. Were they fighting for Earth, or were they simply using this opportunity to further their own agendas? The answer remained uncertain, but Earth's need for power was too great to ignore. The criminals' first actions were as violent and brutal as expected. They led Earth's military forces with the kind of cold precision that had made them so feared in the past. Their tactics were aggressive, their strategies unforgiving. They didn't care for the rules of engagement. They cared only for results. If that meant using underhanded methods, then so be it. Earth's forces, under the guidance of these criminals, launched a counteroffensive against the attackers. Their strikes were swift and devastating. The criminals didn't hesitate to use every advantage they had: their knowledge of the enemy's tactics, their experience in warfare, and their complete lack of compassion. They saw this not as a fight for justice, but as an opportunity to show their power. Their ruthless nature became Earth's weapon, a weapon that could not be controlled but had to be used, for there was no alternative. As the war criminals took the lead in Earth's defense, many of Earth's leaders were filled with a deep sense of unease. Could these criminals truly be trusted? Could they be controlled? The consequences of releasing them could be catastrophic. But at the same time, Earth's military was beginning to see results. The attackers who had caused so much damage to the medical corps were starting to retreat. They hadn't anticipated such a fierce response from Earth. The war criminals' tactics were unpredictable, savage, and effective. But as the attacks continued, the question lingered: what was the true motive behind these criminals' actions? Were they fighting for Earth's survival, or were they simply taking advantage of the chaos to further their own ends? Earth's leaders knew that they couldn't afford to trust them completely, but they also knew they had no other choice. In the meantime, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The release of the war criminals was a gamble, one that could either lead to Earth's salvation or its destruction. Earth had always been the symbol of peace, but now it was forced to play the role of an aggressor. The line between good and evil had blurred, and Earth's future hung in the balance. As the war criminals continued to lead Earth's forces, their brutality and efficiency began to shift the tide of the war. The attackers, once so sure of their victory, were starting to falter. Earth's forces, guided by the very criminals they had once feared, were proving to be an unstoppable force. But even as the enemy began to retreat, the question remained: would Earth be able to maintain control over the very criminals it had freed? And if they succeeded in defending the medical corps, would they truly be able to return to the peace they had once known, or had they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? The galaxy was waiting, and Earth had no choice but to press on. The war criminals were no longer just Earth's last hope. They were now the key to its survival. The counterattack begins. With the war criminals now fully integrated into Earth's military response, the tide of battle began to shift. What had once seemed like a hopeless defense was now a calculated and merciless counteroffensive. Under the guidance of those who had once been Earth's worst enemies, humanity's forces launched a series of retaliatory strikes against the attackers. The battle had begun in earnest. The attackers, who had been so confident in their ability to destroy Earth's medical corps, found themselves unprepared for the ferocity of the counterattack. Earth's military forces, bolstered by the war criminals' ruthless strategies and knowledge of warfare, took the fight directly to their enemies. These criminals knew how to manipulate the battlefield, how to set traps, how to strike fast, and how to use fear as a weapon. What they lacked in morals, they made up for with sheer efficiency. The first few strikes were brutal. Earth's forces, once limited in their response, now unleashed everything they had. The criminals led the charge, their tactics as shocking and unforgiving as the enemies they had once fought against. They understood that the only way to defeat an enemy like this was to be just as merciless. Every battle they fought, every enemy they encountered, was met with a level of violence that Earth had long abandoned. In the heat of battle, the attackers began to realize that Earth was not the peaceful, defenseless world they had thought it to be. The criminals led strike after strike, hitting the enemy with calculated precision, knowing exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Their familiarity with brutal combat and their knowledge of the enemy's weaknesses made them deadly assets. The attackers' retreat was inevitable. The scale of the counteroffensive, combined with Earth's newfound ferocity, was overwhelming. Despite the successes on the battlefield, Earth's leadership remained on edge. The criminals, though effective, were not allies in the traditional sense. They were using this moment of desperation to prove themselves, but no one truly knew if they could ever be trusted. Could Earth afford to rely on people who had caused so much pain in the past? The military leaders knew that, despite the victories, they were walking a fine line. If the criminals turned on them now, Earth would be at their mercy. The first wave of counterattacks had done its job. The attackers were retreating, and Earth was reclaiming what had been lost. However, this was only the beginning. The war criminals, while crucial to the success, were also becoming a wild card. What would happen once the war was over? Would Earth be able to rein them in? The galaxy was watching, and Earth had to move fast before the situation spiraled out of control. The victory was short-lived, as it was clear that the attackers were only regrouping. The criminals knew this was the moment to press their advantage. They were ruthless, unyielding, and determined to crush their enemies before they could regroup and retaliate. Their willingness to sacrifice anything for victory was something Earth's forces could not replicate. And so, the war criminals led Earth's military deeper into enemy territory, pressing forward with unmatched intensity. However, as Earth's military took the fight to the enemy's home front, the situation grew more dangerous. While Earth's forces had the upper hand, the war criminals' methods were becoming increasingly unpredictable. They were willing to use any means necessary to win, including strategies that could result in massive collateral damage. This was the cost of relying on such brutal forces, but there was little choice now. Earth's medical corps had been attacked, and this was the only way to take revenge. As Earth pressed on, pushing deeper into enemy territory, the cracks began to show. The criminals, once held captive for their crimes, now fought alongside Earth's forces, and the tension between Earth's military leaders and the criminals grew. Could they continue to control them, or would they turn on their benefactors, the very people who had released them from their prisons? The situation was far from stable, and each victory brought with it a new set of questions. The attackers' hold over Earth's medical court had been broken, but the war was far from over. Earth had regained its foothold, but at what cost? The war criminals' leadership was proving to be effective, but dangerous. As Earth's forces advanced, they knew that the real fight wasn't just against the attackers. It was against the unpredictable nature of the criminals who had been unleashed. The counterattack was only just beginning, and Earth's future remained uncertain. The galaxy watched, knowing that this war would define humanity's place in the universe. Would Earth be able to return to the peace it had once known? Or had it become something else entirely? Something darker, more dangerous? The answers lay in the coming battles, where Earth would fight not just for its survival, but for its very soul. The dark truth revealed. As Earth's counterattack gained momentum, the war criminals proved themselves more than capable on the battlefield. Under their ruthless leadership, Earth's forces tore through the enemy's defenses with precision and brutality. Yet, despite the clear success of these early victories, a growing sense of unease lingered in the air. The galaxy watched Earth with a mix of awe and fear. Could the war criminals really be trusted, or were they simply using this opportunity to further their own hidden agenda? As Earth's military continued to press forward, a dark truth began to emerge from the shadows. Earth's enemies, the attackers who had initially targeted the medical corps, were not random adversaries. They were not a group of rogue fighters or power-hungry warlords. The attackers were part of a larger, more complex alliance, one that had been operating in secret for years. The truth of this alliance's existence would rock Earth's leaders to their core. The attack on the medical corps was not just an isolated event. It had been a carefully planned strike, designed to cripple Earth's greatest symbol of peace and unity. But as Earth's forces dug deeper into the enemy's territory, they uncovered something far more sinister. The Alliance was not simply trying to destroy Earth's medical capabilities. They were trying to destroy Earth itself. The attackers were led by a coalition of galactic factions who saw Earth's rise to power as a direct threat to their dominance. For years, these factions had operated in the shadows, quietly building their forces and planning their assault. They had watched as Earth's peaceful influence spread across the galaxy, and they had seen how the medical corps had become the cornerstone of Earth's power. The enemies knew that if they could destroy Earth's healing abilities, they could cripple the planet's influence and weaken its standing in the galaxy. What was even more shocking was that this alliance was not just composed of external enemies. Some of the factions within the alliance had once been part of Earth's past, species that Earth had once helped, but had since turned against them. These species, once grateful for Earth's medical aid, now viewed Earth's growing influence as a threat to their own power and control. The very species that Earth had helped heal and protect had now joined forces with those who wished to see Earth fall. The discovery of this alliance sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership. For years, they had believed they were fighting for the good of the galaxy, for the peace they had worked so hard to build. But now, it seemed that Earth's very existence was under threat from those they had once called allies. The lines between friend and foe were blurring, and Earth's leaders found themselves facing a difficult reality. Their enemies were not just those who had attacked them. They were also those they had once trusted. As Earth's forces uncovered more about this alliance, the extent of the conspiracy became clear. The attack on the medical corps had been a part of a larger, more calculated plan to weaken Earth's power. The goal wasn't just to destroy the medical corps. It was to erase the very idea of Earth's influence from the galaxy. If Earth's enemies could cripple its ability to heal, to show mercy, to lead, they could erase Earth's image as a symbol of hope. The galaxy would no longer look to Earth as a beacon of peace. Instead, they would see it as a vulnerable target, ripe for destruction. As the dark truth about the alliance came to light, Earth's leaders were faced with a choice. They could continue to fight back with the same brutality that had been used against them, using the war criminals to wage a merciless war, or they could seek a path of diplomacy, trying to salvage some of the peace they had worked so hard to build. But the reality was harsh. Earth's enemies had already shown that they were not interested in peace. They wanted to destroy Earth's power, and they would stop at nothing to achieve that goal. The war criminals, who had once been seen as humanity's greatest threat, were now more valuable than ever. Their knowledge of war, their understanding of the enemy's tactics, and their willingness to fight without hesitation made them the only force capable of standing up to the Alliance's full might. As Earth's military leaders looked at the war criminals, they realized that there was no going back. The path forward was one of total war, no diplomacy, no mercy. Earth would have to fight to the bitter end. The attackers were not just enemies. They were a part of something larger, a movement that threatened to rip apart the fabric of the galaxy itself. Earth was no longer just defending its medical court or its territory. It was defending its very identity, its future, and its place in the galaxy. And with that realization came the grim understanding that the true cost of this war would not just be measured in lives lost or planets destroyed. It would be measured in the sacrifices Earth was willing to make in order to preserve its place in the galaxy. The question now was simple. Could Earth win this war, or had it already crossed a line from which there would be no return? The final battle and Earth's vengeance. The time had come for the final confrontation. Earth had fought through the darkest hours, shedding blood and sacrificing its very ideals to secure its survival. The galaxy had watched as Earth, once a symbol of peace and unity, had been forced to abandon its values to fight back against the forces threatening to tear it apart. Now the battle was no longer about protecting the medical corps or defending its peace. It was about survival. Earth's very existence was on the line, and nothing would stop them from taking revenge. With the war criminals at the forefront, leading the charge, Earth's military forces pushed deeper into enemy territory. Every enemy stronghold was dismantled with brutal efficiency. The criminals, with their unrivaled knowledge of warfare and their complete disregard for rules, fought without mercy. The line between right and wrong had blurred so much that the concept of mercy itself seemed almost irrelevant. This was no longer a battle for peace. This was Earth's vengeance. The final assault came at a massive cost. Earth's forces, led by the war criminals, advanced towards the last stronghold of the Alliance that had orchestrated the attack on the medical core. The enemy had fortified their position, preparing for Earth's counterattack. It was clear that the Alliance would not yield easily. They had already seen how ruthless Earth could be, but they still underestimated the human spirit. Earth's resolve was unshakable, and the war criminals' presence only added to the ferocity of the assault. As Earth's forces engaged the Alliance's final defenders, the battle grew fierce. The criminals fought with unmatched savagery, tearing through the enemy with the same brutal efficiency they had used against their own people in the past. But their methods were exactly what Earth needed. They knew how to exploit weaknesses, how to strike when and where the enemy least expected it. Every decision made by the criminals was calculated for maximum damage. They were the perfect weapon for this war, ruthless, cold, and entirely focused on one goal: victory at any cost. But even as Earth's forces advanced, the final battle revealed just how deep the wounds of this conflict ran. The Alliance, though severely weakened, still fought with desperation, knowing that losing this battle meant the end of their entire operation. The galaxy had underestimated Earth's resilience and its willingness to fight for its survival. This final stand would decide the fate of Earth, and perhaps the fate of peace in the galaxy. The war criminals, despite their cold nature, had one final role to play. As Earth's forces breached the last of the enemy's defenses, the criminals led the charge directly into the heart of the Alliance's command center. The battle was vicious and relentless. There was no mercy here, no offers of surrender. It was a fight for domination, a struggle between the past and the future. In the midst of the chaos, a leader of the enemy alliance, a figure who had been one of the masterminds behind the attack on the medical core, stood at the heart of the stronghold. The criminal leaders, once Earth's worst enemies, now found themselves face to face with this individual. The final showdown was about to take place. The fight that ensued was brutal. The enemy leader was a force to be reckoned with, but Earth's vengeance had reached its peak. The war criminals fought with everything they had, using their years of combat experience and their unyielding determination to bring justice to the attack on Earth's medical core. The battle was intense, but in the end, it was clear that Earth would not be defeated. The enemy leader fell, and the last of the Alliance's defenses crumbled. As Earth's forces secured the stronghold, the galaxy watched in awe. Earth had won. Against all odds, they had triumphed over an enemy that sought to destroy their very way of life. But the victory came with a heavy cost. The war criminals, once feared and despised, had played a key role in Earth's survival. They had redeemed themselves in the eyes of many, but the question still remained: could Earth ever return to the peaceful existence it had once known? With the final battle over, Earth's leadership faced the difficult task of rebuilding. The medical core, though severely damaged, would eventually rise again. But Earth had been forever changed. The brutality of the war, the reliance on the war criminals, and the harsh decisions made along the way had altered humanity's path. The victory was bittersweet. Earth had avenged the attack on its medical core, but in doing so, it had sacrificed a part of itself. The war criminals were imprisoned once more, their role in Earth's defense now a distant memory. Some believed they had redeemed themselves. Others saw them as nothing more than tools of destruction. But one thing was clear: Earth had faced the darkness, and it had survived. As Earth's leaders looked toward the future, they knew the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. Earth had proven that it could fight back against any enemy, but at what cost? The question would haunt humanity for years to come. Would Earth ever be able to return to its roots of peace and healing, or had the war forever changed the course of its future? Only time would tell. But for now, Earth stood victorious, its vengeance complete. And the message was clear: Earth would never be an easy target again.